So I'm glad the crappy trend of bad SmackDowns kind of came to an end after this really good Raw we had. We kind of had finally a 2-hour SmackDown, which seemed to not have happened in like a long time, and especially one without like long like commercial breaks as well. So that was kind of enjoyable. To start off the show, we kind of had a recap of the WarGames kind of blitz finish we got from Raw, where you had essentially the full roster of both sides kind of coming out to fight essentially and lay waste to each other, with a returning Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. This opening SmackDown, you kind of had both sides throwing shade at each other in a very entertaining way, where throughout the show you kind of had segments back and forth between Division, Paul Heyman, Logan Paul, Braun and Bronson, and Cody, Drew, and the Usos kind of, trying to one up each other and attack each other, to gain advantage before the upcoming match that's going to happen up in San Diego. The difference between the SmackDowns following decent Raws that do feel, because this did feel like a recap show, I don't feel like anything new was necessarily brought to the table in terms of like, some sort of new narrative progression essentially, but the excitement for what is being built up was furthered basically with having everyone kind of getting in the ring and kind of having these interweaving segments kind of with the matches that are already kind of happening on SmackDown. We did have a Dragunov United States Open Challenge thing that kind of went down as what I think was the match of the night between JD and Dragunov, and holy crap, there were a couple spots in this match, dude, where like I lost it, dude. Like there was I think at one point Dragunov was going for like his signature like rebound off the ropes lariat, right? And when he comes off into the lariat, essentially JD reverses it into a Spanish fly, which is, I popped super crazy for that. It was an insane match. There was like a headbutt battle between them that was insane as well. Just a lot of great spots in this match that kind of proved why Dragunov for the longest time, especially during the SmackDown drought, where these last couple of weeks, I feel like this last month and the month before, where SmackDown has been kind of meh. I feel like the Open Challenge and Dragunov kind of taking it has opened the spotlight for a lot of the mid-card guys, and he's been putting on banger after banger with everybody, really putting a great spotlight on that title and raising his stock as well, because now like crowds are really anticipating when going to SmackDown his match, with whoever it might be with. And this JD match was like a great example of that. Also to note, JD's moonsault, man, he did like a tight moonsault where he got like kind of like a rainbow arc, kind of like a Dirk shot, and it looked really good, but it was a really crazy 2 count, and Dragunov did get the W. And then they did further kind of that challenger list with teasing kind of DIY, both Ciampa and Gargano kind of getting in his face a little bit again, and having the MFTs, having Tama Tonga kind of lurking, letting him know that he's kind of also eyeing the title. So you have like a bunch of branches in this SmackDown that make you look forward to whoever might be challenging next week, if it's even any of those people, because it's always, it can be someone random. To add on to that, we kind of did have a great John Cena John Cena tournament match with Bronson and Carmelo, as like I said earlier, because of the WarGame stuff going on, right? You kind of assume that, for the most part, I think a lot of people thought Carmelo was going to get overlooked, but I do see the vision they kind of have with Melo, and I think there is a long-term commitment they have to him, and I do think this tournament is kind of key to that, and I think his ties to John Cena are big, so I think they do want to play that up going further into the tournament as soon as we get to like the semifinals and finals and stuff like that. So you have Melo and Bronson, and I think using the WarGame stuff to have essentially both teams, or Vision cheating, and then having like the faces for the WarGames team come out to help essentially Melo get the eventual count out W, I think was excellent storytelling. And not only does that further Melo into the tournament, but it gives a reason for Bronson and Braun to kind of solely focus on the WarGame stuff and kind of not give time to Cena and fully focus on the one feud that they should be focusing on. We also got with the women who closed out the show, they got a huge kind of swerve finish where the faces were kind of introducing AJ Lee for SmackDown as the like top kind of like their number 5 pick for WarGames, and in a swerve, essentially, Becky Lynch and the heels came out to stand tall at the end of Raw, or at the end of SmackDown, to just kind of, you know, lay waste to everybody and have a W, just like how on Raw, kind of, you know, you had Becky Lynch's L, you know, losing the IC title, and AJ Lee coming back, you know? So you kind of got everyone in the ring. It was kind of like a all-star team up of both the faces and heels of the women's division, you know. That was, I think, just done really, really well, and like the crowd was into it. Everyone kind of got their own pop, and it's kind of crazy to me how possibly, I think, you know, either WarGames could kind of close out the show. I do wonder what the plot implications are going to be kind of going into this female WarGames, just because, like, there was also a segment where essentially Charlotte had to go kind of have a face-to-face with Charlotte, you know, 1-to-1, and, you know, Rhea kind of laid it all on the line, saying, like, you know, that I have respect for you, that after the feud we kind of had back where they had like a banger match at, I think it was WrestleMania 34 or 30, maybe like 5 or something like that, where those two really just like had a banger of a match, and I think that kind of kicked off Rhea's, like, you know, Dom reign, I think, during the Judgment Day and stuff like that. So, you know, it's very significant, and I think, you know, Charlotte didn't forget that, and neither did Rhea, but, you know, Rhea's at a different point, Charlotte's at a different point, and they kind of had to hash that out within this segment, and it was kind of filmed very, you know, it had a very cinematic feel to it, and so I do think that there is more to those two specifically that they want to get to later, I think, and maybe through this WarGames match we'll see more of an interesting dynamic between them that's not just, you know, a simple team up. We'll see kind of what happens. We'll see how the egos clash, and I think especially with how the heels are all kind of on the same page, especially with how scorned Becky is now that she lost her IC title to, you know, up and comer Maxine, who now has made a name for herself. I think there's a lot of reckoning to be happening for these heels, you know. I think with the Kabuki Warriors being scorned, with Io leaving to Rhea, with Lash and Nia wanting something to prove, especially after essentially, you know, Jade has left everybody in the dust. I think there's a lot of stuff for the heels to prove, where everyone does think that the faces are going to get the W off of this, but I don't know, you know. I think that everyone thinks it's going to be, you know, sunshine and rainbows. Even for the male WarGames, I don't know if it's going to be all W's, you know. They have all the gold and everything like that, you know. It's a star-studded team, and Roman's back, but same time, I think a lot of the heels here have something to prove. The Vision kind of lost it, you know, main head, that's Rollins, and I think at the same time, you know, Drew is scorned and feels screwed out of everything, while, you know, Lesnar's coming back for, you know, what seems to be another paycheck, but he seems to be just as unstoppable. I do think they're going to try to kind of swerve us with something crazy with either the two WarGames matches. I think the John Cena Dominic IC title match is going to be fun. They didn't really build anything towards that, but giving both Finn and JD cool SmackDown matches was great. Penta did go over Finn in their one-on-one match as well for the John Cena tournament, so Penta does move on, but and that was a fun match as well. The crowd was into it, but at the same time, I do think that they're gonna, you know, there's some stuff that's going to be boiling with the Judgment Day, and I think that it will involve that IC title sooner or later. So we'll see what kind of happens with the JD, Finn, Dom, and Cena angle. That's going to probably happen at a Survivor Series. Also, I actually want to point out they did have Jade and Chelsea on the show. Chelsea was the double champion, having her AAA belt and the US title belt, and you kind of had Jade there kind of taunting her to kind of just chat what she was just talking about, kind of gassing herself up to I think it's Isla Dawn, about kind of like, you know, maybe stopping the celebrations and having to work on what we got right now, and you know, being the greatest women's champion in all of this, we need to kind of take care of business. And Jade then, you know, steps up to Chelsea and says, you know, just say that again, I'll show you what a real champion is. And this kind of new Jade, I'd say, like kind of a throwback to the AEW Jade, is exactly the direction they kind of needed to go in, and I'm glad we're gonna get like cool segments kind of with her kicking ass and stuff like that. Now is the women's champion, and well, like I said, we'll kind of see what happens with WarGames. There might be a lot more involvement than we think, between a lot of the women and what's going on, because I don't think Jade takes too kindly to not at least being featured, or maybe has some unfinished business she wants to take care of now that she's really petty. So overall, like, we had a great SmackDown, great matches, good pace. It was actually 2 hours this time. There wasn't like a "we'll be right back" thing for like 5 minutes this time. So I'm just appreciative of that. And I just like this whole week, I feel like the brisk pace of both shows really goes to show that they want to promote this, I think, Survivor Series, and especially John Cena's final match. They want to get people reinvigorated with all parts of the product. And I think, like, going into the WrestleMania season, they want to go really hard with like the stories and make sure that 2025 lands on a great note, since they tried to go really hard at the beginning of the year, and I feel like they kind of started meandering around the middle. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys kind of thought about this SmackDown, and how everything kind of went down, and take care. We'll see you guys, I guess, for Monday Night Raw.